Without further ado, Dr. Uma.
I love you. Hi, everybody. I got out of my high heels and I said, let's just make this as comfortable as possible. Well, welcome, and thank you for being here today. As you can see, I've got a hat on, and it says Shiva. And Shiva is my brother who's running for Senate as an independent. So I would love all of you guys to make sure you go out and vote whomever it is for, but know that my brother's running.
And we'll watch it.
So I'm Dr. Uma, and that's what I go by. I am originally from India, and I grew up in the lovely state of New Jersey, so I got a little Jersey in me, all right, and I'm proud of it. And I had gone through research for many years. I went to medical school in New Jersey, I went to Rutgers undergraduate, and my first life was as a family physician. So I always enjoyed taking care of all ages. And my role as a family physician was helping people get pregnant to letting people even die. And my journey at one point was the hospital was a dangerous place. And I remember making that call to my parents and saying, I really don't want to work in the hospital. And my father telling me, well, where did you think you were going to be working? And I said, I want to do something in preventative health. And that's when my journey brought me to Massachusetts, and I pursued my second career in occupational environmental medicine. So many people don't realize that in the specialty, there's preventative medicine, and there's three subspecialties. There's occupational health, which is related to people that were working in different exposures of work or different environmental exposures to metals, or people that were working in public health, and also aerospace. So people would say, why would aerospace need its own subspecialty? And what we realized was that people that were astronauts, people that worked in the any kind of aerospace industry were prone to certain cancers and illnesses and diseases. So breast cancers, addictions, and lung cancers were prone. And even bone depletion that we saw, like we remember the rule of sixes. An astronaut that spent 6 days up in the air lost 6% of his bone mass, and it took 6 months to regain it back. And I loved this fascination because when my first life of training was down in South Carolina, and I saw a lot of children with lead toxicity. Because down in South Carolina, the old homes had a lot of paint. And pica is what we call when they eat the lead chips. And lead is very yummy, actually. So kids love to eat it. And what we realized was that exposures to certain things over time can cause different types of diseases. And in this country, when I came here in 1970, things changed. 1970 was very unique because that's the year OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, was created, the DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency, and we created Controlled Substance Act. And what the Controlled Substance Act did was classify drugs into 5 classifications. And that's when they placed cannabis along with heroin, LSD, and ecstasy. 1970. So as a physician, when you go to doctors, they give you a prescription, or they electronically mail it to you, and it gets to the pharmacy. So when we write prescriptions for drugs in Schedule 2 through Schedule 5. So because cannabis is in Schedule 1, we can only write a recommendation. And a recommendation is now allowed in 31 states, and it's legally allowable in 9 states. And I think in the next 2 weeks, what I've been told is that we will have the first recreational store open. And I personally dislike the word recreation. I like to call it either over the counter or given as a prescription, right? Because this whole recreational thing really kind of perturbs me. Because how many of you have heard about the endocannabinoid system? Oh, I like it. A few people. I love it. I love it. So this is a system that most doctors, most healthcare providers, and most people know little to nothing about. And I knew nothing about it until about 10 years ago. And doctors, only about 15% of the medical schools even teach it now. Yet, this beautiful system, known as the endocannabinoid system, is a mere 600 million years old. It's evolved from a sea squirt to what we have in humans, and you forgot to teach it to me? I'm a little perturbed. So what we realize also is that in 1964, Dr. Raphael Mechoulam first started to work with this plant in Israel. And he identified THC as a molecule and CBD as a molecule and many other cannabinoids. And what we know about cannabis today is that this plant has over 400 different chemicals, over 140 different cannabinoids, flavonoids, terpenes that give the smell, fatty acids. But these cannabinoids are kind of in a range, as I call it, a spectrum. And Dr. Mechoulam classified THC as being psychoactive and CBD as non-psychoactive. I really don't like that word. Because CBD helps somebody calm down, relax, helps you go to sleep. I think that's a little psychoactive if you ask me. Don't you think so? So I like to use the word intoxicating for THC and non-intoxicating. So that way people kind of understand what it really is about. And I'm really, really cautious about the words I use. And I like to use the word cannabis and not marijuana. Because marijuana has a very different connotation. And the mere fact that we call it a medical marijuana program, again, choice of words that we can change, right? So I look at this as a system, just like a digestive system, a respiratory system. You would never say your digestive system is medical and recreational, or you're eating medically or you're eating recreationally. Why would we do that with this system? And again, this segregation. How many of you knew that it was written as a prescription by doctors in this country? Excellent.
Yes.
Yes. So let's really look at where we are. So we put cannabis in Schedule 1, and we said that there was no medical use for it, no medical research, and a potential for abuse, right? I told you I was from India. In India, it's part of our sacred plants, and it was used for thousands of years in Ayurvedic medicine. It was used by the Egyptians, the Chinese, and they've known about it. And fact number 1, nobody ever has died from an overdose from cannabis. And we're losing people from an opioid epidemic. Is there anybody in this room that doesn't know of somebody that's lost somebody? It's affected every one of us in some way or form. And here is a plant that was used and it was prescribed by doctors, and it was in the pharmacopoeia from 1850 to 1942. And one of the indications was opioid addiction, alcoholism, insanity, treatment of, not cause of, but treatment of. So you mean to tell me you knew about this? And then in October 7th of 2003, the government was handed a patent that says cannabinoids. How convenient. All of them is what they mean. And what did they say? As an antioxidant and neuroprotectant. Not neurotoxic, neuroprotectant. They knew about it for Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia, stroke prevention. And you mean to tell me you forgot to teach it to me? Why? Why did they do that was my question, right? And the reason is, what is cannabis? It's a plant. It's a plant that I say is for 5 purposes. It's for people. It's for pets. It's for the planet. It's for peace. And it's for profit. Yes. And we can make this place a better place. And what cannabis is for food, fuel, fiber, paper, and medicine. And what did we do? We replaced it with synthetics, synthetic, 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 and they have names. The Hirsch, the DuPonts, the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, and the Mellons. They portrayed this. What was listed as cannabis sativa was now changed to marijuana. And they created a marijuana stamp tax in 1937. And they put this plant into prohibition. And what that did was make this illegal. Stigma is a set of negative or unfair beliefs that a group or society has against something. And that something is cannabis. Yet, this plant works with this beautiful system known as the endocannabinoid system. We realized in 1988 that we had receptors. CB1, cannabinoid receptor 1, was primarily in the brain. Cannabinoid receptor 2 was primarily in the immune system. What do you know? Gut and brain connection. We're learning a lot. People hear about this leaky gut syndrome. It's all because of inflammation. And what we realized was that in 1992, the first endocannabinoid was identified, again by Dr. Meshulam's lab. And I had the honor of meeting Dr. Hannes, who actually identified it in Israel. And anandamide is in breast milk. The first drop of breast milk a baby receives has anandamide in it. And anandamide mimics THC. How beautifully could that be? And that's why it works with our body, to bring us balance. And Dr. Damaso explains this beautiful system in 5 words. That it helps us to relax, eat, sleep, forget, and protect. If any one of those things was out of balance, if your muscle twitched all day long, but your brain was seizing, then what if it didn't work at all, right? What if you ate too much and you had obesity? What if you didn't eat at all and you had anorexia? What if you forgot too much? Alzheimer's, dementia. What if you don't forget? PTS, our veterans that remember those episodes. I always jokingly say, if a woman remembered childbirth, you guys are never getting laid again. So thank God you forget, right? So equally important to forget as it is to remember. Protection. If your body overprotected, we have rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, MS, cystic fibrosis. All of these are overprotection. What if your body doesn't protect enough? You become immunocompromised. Anybody that's ever treated with chemotherapy, radiation, or even if you're diabetic, you don't heal the same way. If you're on an aspirin, you're bleeding too much. So remember the mantra, relax, eat, sleep, forget, and protect. I describe this whole system in 1 word. Because in animal models, when they blocked this receptor and they didn't suckle, when the animals didn't suckle, they died. So I explained the endocannabinoid system in one word: life. That's why cannabis is so important. I look at cannabis as a supplement, as a deficiency that we've had to suffer with because we've removed it for all these years from our society. We've replaced it with synthetics. And what we realized from the time cannabis was removed, cancers have increased. One of the things that my brother's fighting for is about GMOs. And that's something that I really am so passionate about, because we're producing food when a chicken can be born and be at a table in 4 weeks. What are we doing? And if they live beyond that, they're going to die. Our mutant things that we've got, synthetic chemicals, our sprays, everything. And our bodies are having to change. And if you have inflammation, if it's in our skin, we call it dermatitis. If it's in your joint, we call it arthritis. If it's in your bursa, we call it bursitis, appendicitis, and the list goes on and on and on. Every freaking thing is an itis, right? Bottom line. And then we have these things called pills. And there's a system that I used to work for called healthcare. So I decided to create a new path now. And I created Total Healthcare THC. And I use 3 words: educate, embrace, and empower. And all of my patients know about the endocannabinoid system. All of our patients understand that this is about harm reduction. It's not for everybody, but I truly believe it should be a first-line option and not the last resort. All our patients understand that there's different delivery systems of how you can use cannabis. Because there's no one thing for everybody, and everybody's different every day. We understand that our society that we live in today, most doctors don't know about this, so there's 3 sets of doctors and 3 sets of patients. Our patients that have never ever used cannabis, patients that are, I call, self-medicating, not recreational users, self-medicating, and patients that are prior users. Sort of like in my age group in our 50s, where we used it in college and high school, and now we got reintroduced to it. So those are the 3 age groups that 3 sets of patients. As far as our physicians go, there's those that just totally alienate the patients and say, I don't want to know anything, and you're not in my practice. That's how they've treated them, especially the pain clinics. Then there's the doctors that say, you know, if it's working for you, great. I don't want to know about it either. And then there's those doctors and healthcare providers that say, you know, I work for this system, and they're honest. They say, I work for this federal hospital system, and I work for Medicare, Medicaid, but how's it working? And they get engaged, and they're curious because they can help other patients now, and sometimes even themselves or their family members. So it's changing, and I'm proud of what I do every day. And we also empower our patients because we teach them that this is not about healthcare. Because I've been part of this, you know, the 5 common diseases that I used to treat for. Blood pressure, diabetes, cholesterol, something for reflux, and something for anxiety or depression. Just to cover all bases. And these patients are on these pills forever. Go home and look at your pill list. Statins need to be discontinued. Mark my words. Everybody that's on a statin today will have some form of dementia. And they call it standard of care. Yeah. So look and really see what you're putting in your body and really learn to look at the labels. And that's the same for the cannabis. We need to know where is it coming from, who produced it, has it been tested, has it been checked for pesticides, is there heavy metals, what's the residual, and then to look at the profile of this plant. We also want people to understand that the delivery systems are inhalation, quick. So when you inhale something, you can smoke it or vaporize it, and there's all different sorts of toys out there. I'm still not completely sold out on all of these vaporized cartridges, to tell you the truth, folks. Because they're doing these extractions and they're depleting things out of it. I still believe in the whole plant. So when we talk about whole plant, let's define what that means. So cannabis is now segregated, literally, into two classifications, hemp or marijuana. And the classification varies based on the THC. If it's less than 0.3%, it's hemp. If it's more than that, they classify it as marijuana. Okay. And what we're realizing is the hemp plant has all of these beautiful cannabinoids in it as well, and they're getting CBD from that. They're extracting it out that way. Or from the whole plant, from the marijuana plant, and they're extracting out the CBD. There's also synthetic chemicals people are putting. So knowing where your source of the product is very important. Also understanding that in cannabis, we talk about the two strains. There's actually three: cannabis sativa, cannabis indica, and cannabis ruralis. The two biggies that we talk about are cannabis sativa and cannabis indica. And I used to get these all confused. And most of them are confused, because most things are a hybrid. They're going to be a cross between sativas and indicas. And right now, standardization and testing is not 100% accurate. So it's a range. It's like saying you might be a little pregnant. I'm not really sure what that means, right? Either you are or you're not. So the range of standardization is off about, from the last ACS conference I heard, is about 18%. So this is why it's very, very important to understand that when you take your medicine, how will it work on you? Inhalation is going to be quick, but it's short acting. You can do edibles. When you take an edible, it's going to have to get metabolized in the liver. What else gets metabolized in the liver?
Alcohol.
Thank you. Alcohol. Well, we allow alcohol in our society, right? I went to a medical meeting the other day, and you check in, you get your badge, and it's held at a tavern, so they give you 2 drink vouchers. I want to see the day when we go have 2 joint vouchers. Right, where's the trade-in, right? But what I'm trying to explain is that it gets metabolized by the liver, and so does alcohol. And this is why I tell people, really stay away from alcohol. Alcohol is a depressant. It kills your brain cells. There is no alcohol deficiency, and it yet is legal, right? And it kills so many people. Edibles are a little bit tricky, but I explain to people that it's a longer lasting, so people understand how to combine it together. And then there's topicals that you can apply multiple times in different areas. And my favorite, other suppositories. And these suppositories, we're in the process, will be able to be put in rectally, vaginally. You can put them under your mouth. So tinctures, sublingual, these are all different delivery systems. And understanding how you can use them and how it works for you is the beauty. And that's why you never will ever hear Dr. Uma talk about dose. I use the word titrate. And I look at cannabis consumption as servings. So what's your servings of food every day? You don't eat the same thing every day. It depends what you got. What season is it? So you might be able to get vegetables in different forms. The same way it is with cannabis. Every time you go to a dispensary now, you don't get the same identical things. It's sort of like getting a pint of strawberries. Yes, it's a pint of strawberries, but it doesn't have the same number of strawberries, and it's not gonna weigh the same amount. Make sense? This is why we say titrate. And Dr. Uma has 3 rules. Rule number 1, when you use cannabis, you're gonna start out by hydrating. People just don't hydrate enough. Water and add a little lemon, lime, or apple cider vinegar in it. That's your cheap and dirty way of alkalizing it. Always hydrate before you medicate. Rule number 2, every time you start with a product, you don't know how you're gonna react. So you're gonna start out low or very low and make sure you have food on board. Why? Because cannabis can make you a little hypoglycemic. That's why people help them lose weight too. So having a little food, you won't get that anxiety. And you're gonna go up or down depending on how you feel. So if it's 1 puff, 1 second. If it's a little corner of a cookie, it's a little corner of a cookie. And you see how you feel. And rule number 3, you're gonna journal. Journaling is so important because it's the first time you actually start acknowledging what you're putting in your body. And everybody's a little different. So this is how we tell people. Pick like inhalation. So if you need something, pick a sativa and an indica and see how it works for you. Because at the end of the day, it's about you. And every day you don't have the same things happen to you. We don't have the same activity. And you'll understand how you'll use it. And initially it'll take you time to get to that balance. And once you get to that place, you won't need much. You'll start to see that you will only need a little bit because you're getting to that balance where you're not deficient anymore. Make sense? Okay. So I've explained to you a little bit about the history. I've explained to you about the endocannabinoid system. And I want you to understand why this endocannabinoid system is so important. So when we talk about dopamine and serotonin, many people know about SSRIs and why people get anxious and depressed. So they're made in the presynaptic, like in the nervous system, and they're released and they bind to the receptors on the postsynaptic. Our endocannabinoids are very unique. They're not made in the pre, they're made in the post. And they're released and they bind to the pre. So it's a retrograde mechanism. Instead of going from pre to post, they go from post to pre. So it's sort of like coming in and saying, you know, the lights are kind of bright. So we say, no problem. We got a dimmer switch. We'll turn it down. A few minutes later, you say, you know, it's kind of dark. Let's turn it back up a little bit. So it's that adjusting that you will learn that you need to get you to balance. You're gonna say, what part of 0 is not evidence? Dr. Uma wants to know. Okay, because nobody's died. And www.pubmed, PUBMED.gov. Over 20,000 articles about cannabis from all over the world, and even in this country, there's lots of research going on. Don't let them fool you anymore. Please get involved in your care of your own body. And remember what I said this plant is for. People, pets, the planet, for peace and for profit. So I want to leave you guys with this word that open your hearts, because you don't need to use this medicine, but you know somebody that can benefit from it. Open your minds, because now you know we all have an endocannabinoid system. Okay? So remember, reach 1, teach 10. God bless, and I'm going to be here to answer questions for you guys.